Now I didn't film putting this cork on, but what I've done, I've used up some offcuts from when I did my last bit. I do need to trim them down a little touch. I've put a sort of bit of a side piece in here, and the glue I've used for this is Aqua Forte. I used it on my last one. I can't think who makes it. So it's just called Super Strong Aqua Forte. So it's a pond glue, a bonding filling thing designed for ponds really, but it works really well and it's fumeless, so you don't get loads of fumes off it. Now, I could have used the background that came with this. Oh, sorry, not my lights. This one. But I decided against that, and we've got a chorus. Now, obviously it's a small space, so what I'm going to do is trim these down, rough up the edges, and then try and sort of carve into it a little bit as much as I can. I'll flip this over to do that, or flip it on its side to do that and do each bit, but hopefully I'll get this time lapsed and you guys can sort of see everything as it's happening. So as you can see, what I've done is I've textured it a bit. Now I'm a bit worried about this side, but hopefully plants will just grow up there and cover that anyway. It's just where I joined the pieces together. But as you can see, apart from this corner, which I'll give a bit of a scrape to now, I've pretty much covered the joins. So just scratching away at it, cutting away at it, it sort of seems to have done the job. But I do need to clean this bit here with a razor. Now before I put my leaker balls in, what I've done is I've castled the end, so this is a short piece of plastic pipe. I'm going to sit it somewhere, maybe here, maybe in the corner, and the idea of that, it just sits out the way, and I'll put a sponge in the top to block it, and it's somewhere to access any water that goes below the leaker balls. So let's get that glued into place. I'll put my clay balls in and I'll put a mesh divider on top of those. Now, with regards to hardscape, I didn't want to hardscape anything that I couldn't remove. Because this is a grow out tank, I do need to remove stuff to be able to catch frogs to move them on. So what I've decided to do is I've got a couple of pieces of bogwood that were from another build. I do need to wire brush the edges off, and I am literally just going to sort of bury them in the substrate and put them in there somehow, so they're just rested, so I can sort of lift them out and do what I need to do with those. But let's get those. This is expanding foam where they were in the other build, but I'll brush that off with a wire brush and we'll crack on. I do need to put the substrate in as well. Let's do that next. Now that bucket that I showed you of my mix, this is bonsai pumice. So bonsai pumice, 40% bonsai pumice, 40% orchid bark, and I've used SL Aqua More Nature black soil of the final sort of 20%, but I don't want to get my hands dirty. I've just got out the shower. But let's get some of that in, probably too much. I do want to slope it towards the back. And build up the back a little bit. Making sure I've got enough depth to plant in. And then once I've got this in, what I'm going to do is just give it a good spray down. Yeah, that's perfect. Let's give this a bit of a spray down before I decide to plant or put the hardscape in even. Now I probably should have had the cork a little bit higher up, so the soil went under the cork rather than it sitting in potentially moisture. But just giving it a good wet down, so when my plants are in, they'll sit. Now the plants I've put in there are, I don't know what this plant is. It was just something that came in with some frogs that I bought, and what I did was I just rooted it for use at a later point. So I've dropped that in there. Not sure what plant that is, but I do know that this is Ficus pumila sunny, and personally I'd never use that in another terrarium build. The reason I've used it in this one is because I want it to cover quickly. So I want this to sort of grow in really quickly, and this will sort of grow in really quickly. I need to put my cleanup crew in, and I need to put a sponge in the top of that drainage pipe, and then to sort of finish it off I just need to put some film on the edges, some black film on the edges and on this front lip. Let's put the lid on, let this settle in for a bit, and we'll pick up from there. So I do have this little colony of springtails and dwarf whites. I fed them yesterday, so you can see the food there, and I'm tempted to just have a bit of a scoop out of that. I took a generous scoop and just put that at the bottom, and there's quite a few dwarf white isopods and springtails in that. And then what I'll do is I'll just put the food back into this one, and there's still dwarf whites and plenty of springtails in here for my colony. Only thing left to do is to get this film cut and put on both sides. I'm not going to bother with the back because it won't be visible, but I do want to leave this side open so you sort of get a corner view. So we'll have to work out how I'm going to trim down here. And there we have it, the right side, the left side, and the front panel with the little viewing window so I can see when the water level's full. So the lights are off at the moment, but I hope you enjoyed that. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing so we can follow along and watch my tadpoles, they're all under the leaves, become froglets.